Yo, what is up, ladies and gentlemen? It is your boy Zithy here, and I am back at it again to drop the 14K special. This being, what if Naruto and Sasuke fused? And you may be looking at the thumbnail just like, what does this man mean by that? Now, do you guys see that little potara earring? Yeah, that's how it's gonna happen. And in case you're wondering, yo, dude, how'd you think of this idea? Well, I was just like literally looking around, and then I saw this image, this little image of the thumbnail. I was like, dude, that kind of looks like Naruto and Sasuke if they were to fuse. And then I was like, dude, I have to do it. I just had to. Immediately, as soon as I thought of the idea, I was just like, this is going to be amazing. Like a Naruto and Sasuke fusion together. Imagine the Asura and Indra path both together. The nine-tailed fox and the Sharingan all in one. The massive amounts of chakra and Sasuke's intelligence. Dude, this is going to be just completely broken. It's going to be insane. And if you want to find out how this story goes, definitely stick around. Tell a friend to tell another friend. Go get your snacks and get ready for the amazing what if. Okay, so it's at this current moment that you're probably wondering, how are you going to make this work? How are Naruto and Sasuke going to find potara earrings? Well, you're about to find out. Do you guys remember in the Land of Waves when, Sakura and Naruto and, Sasuke basically ended up fighting against Tazuna and, oh wait, no, not Tazuna, but, Zabuza and Haku. Yeah, Zabuza and Haku, right? They ended up fighting against Zabuza and Haku, and everything was basically well. They ended up accomplishing the mission, and the bridge was named the Naruto Bridge. In this version of events, instead of leaving that same day, instead, they end up returning to Tazuna's house for one more day. And in this version of events, when they are at the dinner table talking about what transpired today, this is when I'm pretty sure Tazuna's daughter name is Mikoto. So Mikoto would walk up to Sakura and say thank you so much for, protecting Tazuna when they were on their mission. She would start thanking Sakura uncontrollably, and Sakura would say that it was no problem at all. It was her pleasure. She would say that, thank you so much. And this is when she would go grab something from upstairs. She would end up going and grabbing a pair of earrings, and she would gift them to Sakura, and she would say thank you. Sakura would of course accept these just due to the fact that, she doesn't want to be rude and just be like, no, I don't want them. So she would of course accept them. And this is when they would all basically have a normal day. Sakura would kind of just put them in her bag. And this is when they would end up walking home the very next day, early in the morning. This is when obviously Sakura and the rest of the group would start walking back to when this is when Sakura would take out the earrings, to which Sasuke would actually look at them and take a little bit of a liking to them, as he would say, hey, Sakura, can I hold them? Sakura would look at Sasuke and be like, of course, Sasuke, you're my amazing Sasuke. She would do that. And Sasuke would hold them as he would start examining them, and he would say, these are so awesome. He would start looking at them and just start examining them a little bit. As, Sasuke would then think of a little funny joke in his head, as he would put one of them on and just start fiddling with the other one to get ready to put them on, to make like a little bit of a joke that, he's wearing earrings too. But right before he can put the other one on, Naruto would rip it away from him and say, come on, Sasuke, it's my turn to see these. As he would then put it on the opposite ear, and Sasuke would say, Naruto, you fool. As this is when they would both basically look at each other, and before anything can happen, a bright light would erupt from out of nowhere. As this is when Sasuke and Naruto would get pulled towards each other, and they would say, what's going on? As it would both get collided, and immediately they would both turn into a fusion of Naruto and Sasuke, who looks just like the one in the thumbnail, except obviously younger, just due to the fact that, that's more like the Shippuden's type of Naruto and Sasuke fusion, and not the, the Chunin exams type fusion type stuff. So after this, they would see each other and kind of just like look at their hands, and they'd be like, oh no. And they would both start freaking out as Kakashi's just dumbstruck. He would literally just be like, what? And this is when Sakura would basically look towards them, and she would say, what happened? Where did Naruto and Sasuke go? Who are you? Kakashi would get into his fighting stance, and this is when they would both say, what? It's me! As you could just hear like that voice like sounding echoey, and they would both be like, it's me! As they would both say, Naruto! And the other one would say, Sasuke! As they'd be like, look at each other, and then they'd be like, we need Lord Third. As this is when they would immediately just start rushing, just hauling ass back to the land hidden in the leaves. As of course, They would end up going there, and this is when they would immediately just knock down like the third Hokage's office door, as Kakashi would have told them not to worry about it, to just basically let time do its thing, that, you know, maybe those earrings have some sort of magical powers or something, and, you know, there's nothing they can really do about it for now, as they would try to, you know, create shadow clones and go back to their normal selves, but it doesn't work. This is when Sasuke would get the bright idea to use a transformation jutsu and go back to looking like his normal self, but Naruto inside him would just be like, no, as they would go back and they'd kind of just be using a lot of their chakra, but they would notice their chakra pool, it doesn't go down. They have so much chakra, it almost feels infinite. Their chakra levels are matching that of the nine-tailed fox itself. Naruto's an Uzumaki and Sasuke being an Uchiha. Imagine the fusion. They would get like a literal 2 times boost, plus the fact that they're rivals. Yeah, this is a fusion on par with the levels of Vegito. This is when they would both realize it. This might not be as bad as they thought, but they would still be freaking out as they would enter the Hokage's office and just start asking him if he knows anything about this. As Lord Third would just basically, you know, be hitting his pipe, as he'd be like, just be like, there's not a thing I can do for you guys. If anything, you guys should go back to the land of the waves. To which Kakashi would just be like, oh god, as he would start getting all of his stuff ready, and they would end up having to go all the way back to the land of the waves instead of being told about the Chunin exams and having the time to train. So during this time, they'd basically be going back, and we're now going to flash forward to when they arrived to Mikoto's house, or Tazuna's house, I guess you could say, as she would immediately just bawl into tears, and she'd be like, I'm so sorry, just telling Naruto and Sasuke that she didn't know, like, it's been in her family ever since her mother found them as a kid, and she's basically had them ever since then. As Naruto would say that, you know, if she knew about this, and she would say that no, she didn't. I mean, she never had an occasion happen where they put them on together. I mean, she usually always wore them either herself or her mother. So, I mean, there's not really much that she knew about them. She found them out on, you know, this on a grass field someday, but ever since then, I mean, she doesn't know. And this is when Naruto and Sasuke would look at each other, as they would both realize that they're stuck like this. They have no way to get unfused, and they would just both freak out as they would scream, no! You would just hear that to the heavens, as this is when Naruto and Sasuke would then start walking home. They'd be pretty angry, and they'd start kicking cans around, as they're, you know, they're pretty angry. This is when Sasuke would then, the Sasuke inside of themselves would be like, well, if I'm gonna be like this now, then I guess we need a name, huh? As the Naruto and Sasuke within them would just be like, I think we should stick with Sasuke. As Naruto within him would just be like, no, and they would just kind of start battling with each other inside, as this is when they would both kind of come to a little bit of an agreement. They would choose the name of Saruto Uchiha. Now, you're probably wondering, why did they choose Saruto? Well, Saruto was because Naruto ended up going with that one, and since the Sasuke within him was just like, yeah, we can't have too much Uzumaki in there, so they would end up choosing Saruto Uchiha. And yeah, I know the name's a little cheesy, but I was not about to go with Narusasu or Saruto or Saruto. I don't know what names I was gonna go with, but the other names just didn't work, and I ended up liking Saruto Uchiha, so that's what we're gonna be ending up going with. All right. Anyways, this is when they would both arrive back to the Hidden Leaf Village, and this is when Kakashi would explain to both of them that, well, or to Saruto, that, you know, that to both of them, seeing as it's Sakura and Saruto, he'd basically say that, well, the Chunin exams are still happening, and seeing as you guys seem to be stronger, you might as well just take it. As they'd both be like, you kidding me? We don't even know how our powers work yet. We have like 1 day to train. And Kakashi would say, well, better put it to good use, as he would smile and give them their little brochures, as they would both basically go off, and, you know, Sakura would just be all over Saruto. She'd be like, so now that both of you are together, I guess this means that, well, maybe we can go out now. She'd be like, what do you say, Sasuke? As Saruto would just be like, the Sasuke within him would just be like, no, as he'd be like, no, thank you. And this is when, like, the Naruto would be like, yes, please, come on. Like, you know, it'd be pretty funny. Obviously, they're both, like, a one entity now, but, like, I'm talking about how their personalities clash is what I really mean. Not actually they're both, like, fighting within themselves, but you get what I mean, right? Their personalities kind of mesh together, and now it's kind of like a goofy, serious, smart, powerful, weird ninja. It's just a thunderclush of random things, right? You kind of think Kakashi. He kind of has like a more of a Kakashi personality now. So this is when they would have that one day to train, and Saruto would take that day to essentially try to see how everything works. This is when he would realize that he has a mixture of both Naruto and Sasuke's abilities, as he's able to still use the Sharingan. However, his Sharingan is now a Tsutomoe in both eyes, and for some reason, he has a weird marking on his belly, the same one that Naruto has. It appears that the Nine Tails also transferred over, and now not only do they have the power of the Sharingan on their side, but they also have the power of the Nine Tails in its of itself. And this is when they would go to a forest and start training the Sharingan and all of the jutsus that Sasuke as well as Naruto knew. They would end up practicing the multi-shadow clone jutsu, and by the end of everything, they would barely be scratching the surface of all of their chakra pool that they have. So yeah, their chakra is just completely on a different level. Their physical strengths just off the charts, and their regen, don't even get me started on their regen, bro. Sasuke has some pretty good durability, and Naruto has the greatest. Imagine adding more durability to Naruto. It's just broken. All right, it's completely broken, and that's literally what this Saruto Uchiha version of Naruto is gonna be like. So if you guys are excited, definitely hit that like button, as well as share it with a friend. Come on, do your boy a favor, help spread the video around. Since I know a lot of people don't see what if Naruto, they're probably instantly what if Naruto was a reincarnation of what if Naruto had powers, they're probably not going to click on it. So do your boy a favor and, you know, help your boy promo the video. That being said, let's get away from that and go back into the story. This is when the very next day would arrive, and of course, seeing as it's not Naruto, Sasuke, and Sakura walking in, instead of Rock Lee like going up to challenge Sasuke, seeing as he knows what Sasuke looks like, he would see that Sakura was next to some other kid who he would of course would go up to Sakura and ask her out, but she would say no to get out of there with those weird eyebrows. And it's at this moment that Saruto would basically look towards Rock Lee, as he would say, yeah, I should get out of here, as Rock Lee would look at him and just be like, where's Sasuke? As like he'd basically say, I'm not Sasuke, I'm Saruto. As Rock Lee would just be like, oh. And this is when they would basically look at each other, as Rock Lee would say, well, I'm going to go look for Sasuke now. It was nice meeting you, as he would then leave the area without realizing that that was kind of Sasuke, and that means that the fight against Sasuke and Saruto, it doesn't happen. This is when Saruto and Sakura would end up going over to the little area where all the Genin 12 met up, and this is when immediately the rest of them would be informed of what happened. The Genin 12 would all be just shocked, and especially Shikamaru would be weirded out by this, as Ino would actually look at them and just be like, wow, looks like Sasuke managed to get even cuter. As this is when Sakura would look over her and she would be like, no, that's my teammate, get away from him. Ino would start flirting with, you know, our boy Saruto, and this is when Saruto would actually give the same sentiment back. Hinata, after hearing that news, would have just passed out, and when she would wake up, she wouldn't know how to feel about this. She loves Naruto, not Saruto, so she doesn't know. And this is when, you know, we would then have Naruto and Ino basically start talking together and flirting with one another, seeing as, you know, the Naruto within the Saruto would have definitely been coming out, showing his pervy nature. Anyways, and this when they would both kind of flirt back and forth. And since this version of Saruto or Naruto and Sasuke never do that little outburst claiming to be the winner, they never end up getting approached by the Sound 4. So none of that ends up happening. And this is when they would just go into taking the written exam, as they would of course pass it, just due to the fact that this version is of Saruto. Oh wait, no, not this version, but Saruto's actually smart. From this point on, I'm just going to be referring to this as Saruto, okay? This is when they would go outside and go get explained everything by Anko, as she would begin to explain to all of them what's going on. She would begin to explain that the Chunin exam is usually a 3-man team, but seeing as technically it is 3, she would allow it to happen. And this is when they would of course sign their waivers and go inside to the forest. As Saruto would of course say that he has to go take a leak, except in this version of events, instead of Sakura just staying back with Sasuke, she decides that she's gonna put her ninja abilities to good use, as she would try to go watch Naruto. But this is when Naruto would get ambushed by Orochimaru. And yes, you heard that right. Sakura, being a weirdo, try to go watch Saruto. Anyways, after that, Naruto would get ambushed by a giant snake, to which Saruto jumps up into the air and slashes the head off of the snake with a sword that he had on his back. As this is when immediately he would notice a woman. It's a woman with weird tongue abilities, would end up saying, So you're as he would look at him and say, Sasuke Uchiha, as he'd be wearing the outfit that you guys can see in the thumbnail with the Uchiha. Oh wait, you guys can't see the Uchiha crest. Anyways, Saruto's outfit is a black shirt with the Uchiha crest on his arm. He even has like a little bit of a weird vest thing on him, and he's wearing just normal shinobi pants, right? He's wearing some normal pants that, you know, most Naruto ninja use. And this is when they would proceed to basically just get approached by Orochimaru, who would then proceed to try to attack Saruto. But this is when immediately he would jump into action and say, Sakura, get out of here. This ninja is dangerous. As immediately Sakura would say, no, Saruto, I'm not leaving you. And Saruto would immediately activate his two Tomoe Sharingan on each eye, as Orochimaru would see this and say, yes. Show me your Sharingan, Sasuke. This is when Saruto would yell, I'm not Sasuke! And Orochimaru would say, what? What do you mean? As this is when Saruto would say, my name is Saruto! As he would blitz over to Orochimaru and create a bunch of clones. He would create like 100, 200 clones that would all rush at Orochimaru, which he would use his snake jutsu to destroy all simultaneously. And this is when Naruto would begin to weave hand signs for the fireball jutsu, as he would blow it towards Orochimaru, and half of his face would get burnt off, revealing Orochimaru's true colors. As this is when they would get into a battle to which Saruto's actually putting up a decent fight. He has two Tomoe Sharingan and Sasuke's finesse as well as Naruto's strength. They're actually going up against each other pretty well. The battle is not a one-sided stomp with Orochimaru making Saruto afraid. He's more cocky. So Saruto would rush at Orochimaru, and seeing as Naruto's personality is in there, he's a little cocky with the fight. And everything kind of remains like that until Orochimaru decides to stop playing games. As he would finally start going a little serious, he would start stomping Saruto, to which Saruto's fear would finally get the best of him. And this is when we would then see Saruto finally start to kind of waver in his confidence and stuff like that. As he would begin to get a little terrified, he would then jump back as his fear would start overrunning him. And the power of the Nine Tails would start to seep in as he would begin to lose in the battle. This is when slowly his power would start getting amped up, and Saruto would finally start putting up a better fight against Orochimaru, to which Orochimaru would realize that this is a battle he probably won't win. So he would decide that he needs to get what he needs to do done fast and retreat immediately. And after that, this is when he would proceed to bite Saruto on the neck and retreat as fast as he could. As this is when Saruto would drop down to the ground, and due to the fact that he got bit by the curse mark, he would start feeling a lot of pain. But due to the Nine Tails regeneration capabilities, the curse mark would actually not end up indenting in Saruto's neck, and this would actually lead into Naruto waking up 1 hour earlier than his original canon counterpart after Sakura had set up all the traps. This means that when the Sound 4 characters would actually pull up, Saruto would be able to handle them all simultaneously without Rock Lee. And Rock Lee, seeing this, would end up going down there to try to challenge Saruto, to which he would notice that he was pretty tired. Saruto seemed completely out of it, and due to Rock Lee having respect, he would then say, I will be fighting you later on in the Chunin exams. Don't you dare get weak later on. As he would then jump away, and we would then have Saruto being like, yeah, I'm glad he was willing to let me go. As he would lay back down, and for the next 3 hours, he would just pass right back out. As this is when they would then finally make it to the Chunin Tower, and they would all basically meet up with the rest of the Genins. As this is when they would have the preliminaries, and after that rest that Naruto ended up, Saruto, I'm so sorry guys, I keep messing it up and saying Naruto instead of Saruto, but it sounds the same. Come on, if you guys, I'm just gonna say this, if you guys hear me saying Naruto instead of Saruto, or Sasuke instead of Saruto, just know I'm talking about Saruto. Alright, this is when they would basically go up there and have their fight against Kiba. Of course, you know, the normal fight that happened in the original, except it wouldn't be like the original. This version is quite literally Sasuke with all the Naruto amps and his just cocky, weird ninja personality. So they would literally just say, alright, you ready? As Kiba would say, it doesn't matter who you are, Saruto or Naruto or Sasuke, I'll take you both on. As he would say, Akamaru, now! And they would say, transform! As they would transform to their little beast forms, and they would try to sue the Fang over Fang at Naruto, as Saruto would proceed to basically start fighting against Kiba. As immediately, he would stick both of his hands out and say, fireball, fire style, fireball jutsu, shooting a fireball straight at Kiba as he would jump back onto the wall and be standing on it, as he would then say, all right, ready? As he would basically say, now, as he would proceed to use the shadow clone jutsu, creating hundreds of shadow clones, as he would rush towards Kiba and restrain Kiba and Akamaru. Akamaru would de-transform, and this is when Saruto would proceed to go against Kiba, and he would send him, and he would kick him into the air, as he would then say, Lion's Barrage, as he would kick him back down into the ground, and this is when Kiba would get knocked out, leading into Naruto actually winning. Now, the rest of all of the events would basically go as it would in canon, except when Neji tries to hit Hinata in like he did in the original canon events, this version of Saruto would end up jumping in and actually being one of the people who stops Neji from landing the blow, as well as Kakashi, Guy, and Kurenai. And this is when basically he would end up telling Neji that if he ends up fighting him later on, he better be ready to get destroyed, as Neji would smile and say that he is not a prodigy like himself. Destiny will have him win. And Naruto would get enraged by that, as he would then get angry and leave the Chunin exams, as he now has the 1 month training period to train. And this is when Saruto would proceed to go out, as the Naruto type of personality in him would decide that he needs to rest a little bit before he can finally do a little something. So he would go over to the saunas and the little not the saunas, that's not what that is, it's the hot springs, right? He would go over to the hot spring place, and he would end up basically walking over there, as he had his towel over his waist. He would then notice that there's a man with white hair and weird markings on his face. As Saruto would look towards him and say, what are you doing, old man? As Jiraiya would turn around and say, who are you talking to like that? I'm not an old man. I'm Jiraiya, the legendary Sannin of the Hidden Leaf. And this is when Saruto would be like, oh, so you're one of the legendary Sannin, huh? You're one of the three. I don't believe you. Jiraiya would look at Saruto as he would say, what do you mean, kid? Get on out of here. As he wouldn't actually know that this was Naruto low-key. He would then end up leaving, and this is when Saruto would go off into the hot springs, as after doing his research, he would go to the third Hokage's office and ask Hiruzen for where Naruto is. He would say that his name is no longer Naruto, and he would say that it's Saruto. He and the last remaining Uchiha ended up fusing with these weird earrings, and now they are one. As Jiraiya would realize that he was talking to him. That was Naruto? He would say, what? As he would rush over there and go examine Saruto, who's in the bathtub just chilling. As he would see a weird old man with white hair running in there being like, Naruto, is this really you? As he'd say, let go, old man. He would then get into a fighting stance and say, I'm gonna need to teach you a lesson in respect. As he would get into his awesome fighting stance, we would then see Jiraiya smile as he would say, alright. As they would both get into a fight, to which Jiraiya would win, of course. He would have ended up having to use a lot more effort than what you guys would expect, and Jiraiya would end up clapping this man Saruto in a battle, right? After this, he would end up telling Saruto that he is his godfather, Jiraiya, and this is when Saruto would take that in as the Sasuke part in him would say, family. I haven't had family. That's all I need, family. In case you guys haven't seen any of the memes, you guys know what I'm joking about. But anyways, he'd basically be like, all I need is family. As after this, we would then basically see Saruto asking Jiraiya to train him for the 1 month, and Jiraiya, being who he is, would of course do it. He would teach Saruto the Rasengan, and this version of Saruto would end up learning it. And also, due to the fact that he has a larger chakra pool, he was actually able to summon Gamabunta on his first try, a feat that even Jiraiya himself, the Toad Sannin, could not do on his own. As after this, he would end up teaching them more and more jutsus, as well as teaching them better hand-to-hand combat styles and stuff like that. And this is basically what Saruto ends up learning for the 1 month. He ends up getting trained in how to use the Rasengan. He would even be trained by Kakashi himself, and would even learn the lightning blade, the Sharingan, due to Kakashi, of course, wanting to help Saruto with his hand-to-hand combat. So with Jiraiya, he would have spent 2 weeks learning the Sharingan, learning how to use the Rasengan, as well as summoning and trying to control the power of the Nine Tails. And the last week, he would have ended up learning some stuff with Kakashi, learning how to use the Chidori, as well as learning how to, copy Rock Lee's taijutsu style. And that is basically what Saruto does. It's kind of like a little bit of a joint training of both masters. And by the time of the battle against Neji, oh, he's ready. Yeah, he's actually going to have to fight two opponents due to the fact that technically he is two people. So he's actually going to have to fight against Neji first and then Gaara after the other people have their matches. So yeah, it's pretty dope. Anyways, that being said, this is when we will now be jumping over to when Saruto arrives on the battlefield. He would basically arrive in the same way that Sasuke did, with his outfit being pretty cool. And this is when he would look at Neji as he would say, "Destiny will be on my side." As you know, he would be spitting on his blabber about how destiny and the Hyuga and how everything isn't fair, and how the Uchiha, this will be the last breath for the member of the last Uchiha. Like Neji just being Neji, Neji just being Neji. Honestly, this would actually enrage Saruto, and he would immediately activate his two Tomoe Sharingan, to which Neji would laugh at and say that the Hyuga's the Hyuga's dojutsu is far superior to that of the Sharingan. And they would immediately get into a battle, to which Neji would try to use his palm style, his gentle fist, to try to overpower Saruto. It would not work. Saruto would create a bunch of clones that were actually using the power of the Nine Tails, and he would actually end up just being way too fast for Neji to just fight against. This battle ends up in a one-sided stomp, but due to the fact that he gets even stronger due to the rival increase of the Potara, as well as the 2-time buff, this would be just completely insane. Like, their power is just formidable, to say the least. And if Naruto by himself could obliterate Neji, imagine what this version Saruto can do to Neji. Yeah, they would obliterate him, and after that, Saruto would barely be depleted of any of his chakra, so he'd be ready to take on Gaara on the next battle. Gaara would immediately use his sand technique to teleport down there, and Saruto would look at him down as he would say, "This is gonna be too easy." Saruto would get into his fighting position as Gaara would just be staring down Saruto, saying that this will be amazing. He needs more blood. As this is when Saruto would look at him and say, "Dude, you're creepy. Let's get this over with." He would look down at Gaara, and this is when immediately Gaara would surround himself in the sand dome, just like he had done in the fight against Sasuke. Except in this version, when Saruto uses the Chidori to stab into Gaara, it results in something way different than just poking into Gaara's sand dome and being able to cut him a little bit, showing a little blood. No, this version ends up completely obliterating, decimating the sand shield, and he stabs into Gaara's whole just respiratory system. He destroys it completely, meaning Gaara gets taken out, like all of him, and he just gets knocked out, which actually ends up leading into Shukaku taking full control, which leads into the attack on the Hidden Leaf, the Konoha Crush arc, as immediately Orochimaru would rush in there to fight against Lord Third. And this is when Naruto, after seeing Shukaku in his one-tail state, he would immediately summon Gamma Bunta, which would lead into a battle kind of similar to the one in the original canon, except this version of Saruto has so much more power. He's able to single-handedly obliterate him. After he was able to jump into the air, he would slam a Rasengan into Gaara, waking him up, and he would immediately just get out of his Shukaku state, as that is basically how that ends. And afterwards, Naruto would help out with taking down the rest of the ninjas that are around, which will actually lead us into Lord Third still abruptly losing his life in the battle against Orochimaru. All of those events would end up happening as they would have done in canon, and Orochimaru would still end up getting away, losing both of his arms, leading to Kabuto helping him, and everything kind of going down as it did before. Except Naruto isn't completely passed out for weeks, and there's not even a fight on the rooftop with Naruto and Sasuke, seeing as they are one being. He doesn't have anything to be jealous of, plus the fact that he doesn't have the curse mark. This leads into this version of Saruto being less filled with hatred, although he is, just due to the fact that Sasuke has his hatred towards Itachi and his want to destroy him, and Naruto has his anger towards the village that he has weighing down inside of him. And this This went after everything, way earlier than they would have done in canon. Jiraiya would tell Saruto if he wants to come with him to accompany him with finding the legendary Kanochi of the village, Tsunade, the medical ninja, the legendary medical ninja at that. Saruto would of course agree to this due to the fact that it would be great training, and he would end up going with Jiraiya. Now, due to the fact that Jiraiya already taught Saruto the Rasengan, he would end up teaching him other jutsus, and he would end up actually teaching Saruto how to use the big Rasengan, and Saruto would end up trying to combine both the Chidori and the Rasengan, which actually results in the lightning Rasengan, which if Boruto could do it, I have no reason to believe, and you guys have no reason to believe, that Saruto couldn't do it. The fusion of literal both of them, two of the greatest geniuses of all time. So yeah, they would end up learning the lightning Rasengan, and Jiraiya would be impressed. That's something that not even Lord Fourth can do. So this definitely impressed the both of them. And this is when they would end up, going to the hotel, and the situation with Itachi would happen. Except when Naruto or Saruto opens the door and he lays eyes on Itachi, he would immediately say, "Itachi, I'll kill you!" As immediately he would charge up Chidori. He would say, "Shh, Chidori!" As he would blitz towards Itachi, who was none the wiser. He thought that he didn't know who this was. As he would then see some kid rushing at him with the Uchiha crest on himself, and he would immediately think that he missed one, as this is when he would say, "I'm gonna kill you, Itachi! How dare you kill our parents!" As Itachi would realize who this is immediately, and he would jump back as he would think, "Sasuke." As immediately Sasuke would jam the Chidori into Itachi's side. As Itachi was caught completely off guard, he would see the two Tomoe Sharingan within Saruto's eyes, and he would begin to cough out some blood. He would then puff into smoke, as this is when it would be revealed that Itachi was just a shadow clone. As Itachi would end up putting Saruto into, or trying to put him into the Tsukiyomi, which actually wouldn't end up working, because this version has the Nine Tails. So the Nine Tails was able to repel that away. And we're just going to say that this version would end up getting free from Itachi and using the Lightning Rasengan, which actually ends up catching Itachi off guard. The Rasengan disappeared, so he thought that it just left, but it would have ended up crashing into his stomach, and due to Itachi's lower durability, he gets taken out a lot of his stamina and just energy would get taken down by that one simple attack. And this is when Jiraiya would arrive and do the Toad Mouth Jutsu, to which Saruto would end up basically assisting. And after that was revealed, immediately Itachi and Kisame would definitely have to run away from the area, just due to the fact that, well, they have absolutely zero hope in defeating Saruto and the legendary Sani Jiraiya, with Itachi damaged a lot worse, actually damaged, not like the original counterpart who was just kind of blind. This version literally has blood coming out of his mouth, and due to his injury, he is just completely severely just drained from energy as a whole. And this is when they would end up kind of, getting everything together in order and continue the search for Tsunade. It's at this point where we're just going to skip to the day where they end up locating her in the bar, and they would go inside, to which Tsunade would say the same stuff she does in canon, and Saruto would get angry as he would slam his fist on the table saying, "How dare you say that about the Hokages? You have no right at all. Aren't you the granddaughter of the great first Hokage? How dare you speak on that on the Hokages?" As that was Naruto speaking, and Sasuke as well. They both felt enraged by that. And Tsunade would slam her hand on the table saying that, this brat has no right to speak. She would say to face him outside, and Saruto would activate his two Tomoe Sharingan immediately. As Tsunade would be shocked by that. And this is when Saruto would say that, and when Tsunade would say that if he can land even one hit on her, she'll go back to the village. As Saruto would smile, thinking that he knows the perfect jutsu to hit her without her catching him off guard. Saruto would think of a perfect plan. He would think to act as if he was forming the Rasengan and then completely lost it, so it can catch Tsunade off guard. And this is when Saruto would start forming the Rasengan. As Tsunade's eyes would widen, she would say, "You didn't!" As she would then see Saruto as he creates the the lightning Rasengan, she would say, is he fusing lightning chakra into it? He would then throw it at Tsunade as she would widen her eyes and be ready to just dodge it. But this is when it would disappear in midair, and Tsunade would start laughing as she would say that he can't even use it, as this is when immediately her mouth would get shut as she would get blown away by the power of the lightning Rasengan. If it was able to damage Momoshiki that much, then I doubt it won't be able to damage Tsunade. Tsunade would get just obliterated by that blow, and this is when Tsunade would cough out some blood as she would say to which Saruto would stand over her and say, looks like you have to come back to the... But before he can say anything, what's her name, Granny Tsunade would be a pretty sore loser, and she would grab his leg and she would cause him to fall, hit his head, and get knocked out. As it's the very next day where Saruto wakes up and realizes that Tsunade's with them along on the journey. As you know, they're actually walking towards a certain direction, and Tsunade would end up actually, you know, kind of not, she would end up basically telling Jiraiya to help her with Orochimaru, to which they would end up going over to the location which they did the deal with Orochimaru with, and everything would kind of go as it did in canon. Jiraiya and Tsunade's battle against Orochimaru would be relatively the same, and Saruto would end up helping Tsunade get over her fear of blood, and he would even be able to take down Kabuto with the lightning Rasengan due to the fact that, well, he couldn't see it, and since it was his first time, he was caught off guard by the attack. He was also able to wail on Kabuto with much more attacks, and he was way less battle damage than his original version due to the Nine Tails' influence. Because, well, Naruto ended up tapping into that power, so I see no reason for Saruto not to be able to. This is when we're finally going to lead into them actually being able to obliterate Orochimaru and Kabuto, and them having to use the reverse summoning jutsu to actually get away from them. To which Jiraiya would actually ask Tsunade what was the deal with that, and she would explain what happened with Dawn and her younger brother having the potential to get resurrected through the Edo Tensei jutsu. She would say that she's sorry, and Jiraiya would of course understand, knowing where she was coming from. However, this is when we will now have them all return back to the Hidden Leaf Village, and in this version of events, like I said, they're both two different entities, so they don't have no real grudge against each other, and this is when we're now going to have sort of different events finally start changing in the series. This is where things will start to change big time. In this version, since Saruto's curse mark was never there permanently, he never got to experience the power of being trained by Orochimaru. Therefore, he never ends up actually, well, learning that. And so in this version of events, when the Sound Four do come to attack Saruto, through his sheer power alone is able to defeat the Sound Four. As soon as Jirobo would rush at him using the power of the curse mark, Jirobo would rush at him thinking that Saruto has no real counter to him, just due to the fact that it's one kid. You know, he rushes at him without even taking into account the power of the curse mark. Saruto would actually create a Rasengan and shove it into Jirobo as he would take him out completely. And this is when the other three Sound Four would activate their curse mark stakes 2s, as Saruto would blitz over to them and he would create a bunch of shadow clones which would help him out in fighting the opponents that he was fighting against. And this would lead into Saruto actually completely decimating the Sound 3. Well, Sound 4 originally, but you know, now it's Sound 3. So this is when Saruto would of course go over to the girl with the flute, and he would immediately smack it away from her as he would turn to her direction, and one of his clones behind her would kick her up into the air as Saruto would form the hand signs for the Chidori, as he would form it into his hand and plunge it into her heart immediately before she got the chance to react. This left him to fight the other two opponents, and as this actually happened, this is when Saruto would start to get angry as the two strongest ones were the ones left, and they would start giving Saruto a lot of problems in terms of the fight. So this is when Saruto would actually let his rage overcome him, and he would start summoning the power of the Nine Tails, as he would then start overtaking them, and he would defeat the Sound Four, the ninjas of Orochimaru. This leads into Saruto staying into the village, and actually instead of leaving with Orochimaru to train for the 2 years, he stays in Konoha, meaning that he ends up developing a relationship with none other than Ino, due to the fact that, well, I kind of hinted at it earlier, and this is the girl who I kind of want him to be with. He's not going to be with Sakura. Absolutely not. I will not allow that. So who's the next best thing? Ino. Due to the fact that Hinata kind of has weird feelings for Saruto, due to the fact that Saruto isn't Naruto, he's both. So she doesn't understand how she feels, and she kind of ends up just being sidelined. Ino ends up doing the training with Lady Tsunade, and she actually ends up developing a relationship with Naruto as well. They would still end up going on a 2-year journey, except this version, Saruto would end up going off with Kakashi and Jiraiya, who would both train him in all that they know. So by the end of the 2-year time skip, Saruto himself would end up being even more broken than anything you guys could have imagined. If you thought I made Saruto broken before, get ready, because I'm about to just go crazy. During the time skip, Saruto would have ended up mastering the 3 Tomoe Sharingan. Actually unlocked. No, I'm not going to give him that just yet. If I give him that, he'll GG the entire series. He wouldn't end up mastering he wouldn't end up getting the Mangenkyo Sharingan. However, he would end up mastering the 3 Tomoe. He would end up mastering all of the jutsus that Sasuke was able to learn during the time that he was with Orochimaru, as well as everything that Naruto was able to learn in his time skip. He would end up learning the Rasengan, and he would end up learning how to mesh together all natures into the Rasengan. So at this point, he has all of that under his belt, as well as mastering over KCM1 due to the fact that Kurama still hasn't trusted Naruto, and Naruto was able to defeat Kurama. He was even able to meet Minato and Kushina within his seal during the 3-year time skip. Yeah, it was not 2, but it was 3. And he even ended up learning Sage Mode. So this version of Saruto is how do I put this? Extremely broken. He has all of Naruto and Sasuke's abilities by the end of the time skip, plus KCM1 and Sage Mode, as well as the Rasen Shuriken. Some of you guys are probably down below in the comments. The ones who don't like OP characters are probably like, why do you make him so strong? Like, why is he so... Bro, shut up. Like, I don't care, dude. If you don't like the what if, leave. Anyways, but this is when they would finally arrive back at the village, and Saruto would climb up the post that Naruto had done, as he would yell, "It's great to be back." As this is when a bunch of people would arrive, Sakura included, and would begin to greet Saruto, asking him if he got much stronger during this time. Saruto would throw a thumbs up and a smile, as he would say he did, and he would then basically tell them all that, he's definitely gotten a lot stronger. He would have ended up growing into more of a Sasuke personality, with, obviously being happy by the fact that he was in the village, but during this time, he ended up becoming more serious, more matured, and, just a little bit less of a goofball in and of itself. When he would see Ino, however, he would kind of just have his jaw drop. He would see her development as a kunoichi, and after this he would proceed to do a little bit of studying with Ino, if you get what I'm saying. This is when Saruto would end up going over to Tsunade's office, the tower, the Hokage's little tower thing, as she would end up asking if the training was fruitful. Saruto would kind of nod with a little bit of a smirk, with Jiraiya and Kakashi just both being like, yeah, that kid, he's a monster. Like, he surpassed us in the first year completely. He obliterated and decimated us. And he would even lean over to Tsunade, as Kakashi would say, he has full mastery over the Nine Tails. As Tsunade would say, full mastery? You're kidding. Tsunade would end up telling them that they're going to be putting that to the test. She would say that Saruto is going to be fighting against herself. And they would end up going outside, to which Tsunade would say that he better be ready. Saruto would nod and say that he definitely is, as he would end up activating his 3 Tomoe Sharingan. Tsunade would stare down at him, as she would say that she's been saving up a lot of chakra for just this moment, as she would end up activating the power of the 100 of the seal thing that she has, the Byakuya seal. Yeah, the Byakuya seal. She would end up accessing that power and get into her micro static regeneration form. I believe that's what it's called. Apologies if I did get it wrong, however, guys. But she ends up tapping into that power, and, well, that's basically what ends up going down. This is when we will basically have Saruto. I always mess that up, but Saruto looking at Tsunade as he would say, "You ready, Granny Tsunade?" As Tsunade would look at Saruto and she would say, "Ready as I'll ever be." Saruto would stare down at Tsunade as he would say, "Right," as he would immediately blitz at Tsunade, creating an after image. Tsunade would be like, "What?" And she would immediately get uppercutted by Naruto as he sends her flying into the sky. He would then begin to perform a bicycle kick on her as she's in the air, and Saruto would take out two swords, as he would then cut off both of her arms, knowing that they'll regenerate. Tsunade's arms would quickly heal, and this is when Saruto would proceed to smile as he would land on the ground with Tsunade saying that this is incredible. Saruto would ask her if she wants him to go all out, and she would say, "What? You have more?" Saruto would then smile and say, "Kurama!" as he would immediately tap into the power of KCM1 and obliterate Tsunade. He would decimate Tsunade just completely. Tsunade wakes up in the hospital and she is just GG'd. It's at this point that Saruto would have actually been watched by the Genin 12, Kakashi, and Jiraiya, as Kakashi would end up facepalming, saying that he never did learn how to hold back. As Saruto would smile, and everybody in the Genin would all just be like, "This kid is just too strong." As Saruto would of course end up smiling, and he would end up doing a little bit more studying with Ino, if you get what I'm putting down. This is when Saruto would basically just kind of be chilling, as there's really nothing much for him to do, until Tsunade finally ends up sending a crow to his direction, telling him that there's a mission. The Lord Fourth, the Kazekage Lord, I don't know what Kazekage number Gaara is, but it's noted that Kazekage Gaara obviously ended up being taken, and Naruto as well as Team 7 ends up having to go rescue him. In this version, due to the fact that Team 7 is only 3 people, literally not even 4, they would end up actually having one more person tag along, and this would be Ino, who would end up going along with them, due to the fact that Sakura ends up doing her training with Kurenai, so she's more of a genjutsu specialist instead of, just brute strength. And Ino ends up coming along, leading into Saruto and Ino flirting a lot on the way to the mission. This is when they would finally arrive at the the village hidden in the sand, and what's her name, Granny Chio, would end up attacking Kakashi, mistaking him for the White Fang, as would have happened in its original canon. They would end up finding out about Kankuro, and Ino would end up saving him, with Naruto saying that he's gonna go on ahead. If there's any clues to track them, he'll be able to find them and rescue Gaara before anything can get worse. And before Kakashi or anybody could say a word, Saruto would end up blitzing out of there and rushing over to the direction of the Akatsuki members. Saruto would be thinking that it's finally time to put this training to good use, and he can finally put down the Akatsuki himself. The power that he's obtained should be enough to stop them. Saruto would spend the next couple of hours tracking down Deidara's prints that he left behind, and he would end up arriving to the place where they would end up draining Gaara's tailed beast. Saruto would throw a punch which would shatter the rock which was basically keeping them hidden, and this is when he would see Deidara and Sasori. Immediately he would activate the Sharingan, analyze their movements, as Deidara would say, "Look, Sasori, looks like one ninja came to stop us." Sasori would say, "Wait, that's Saruto of the Hidden Leaf Village. Don't engage him. He's the most powerful Jinchuriki of them all." Deidara would say, yes. He would blitz towards Naruto, and Saruto would proceed to basically take out a sword. As it flies into the air, Saruto would jump up into the air. So he would kick Deidara away. With Deidara in a split second not really knowing what's going on, Saruto would run up the walls. He would kick it straight into one of Deidara's eyes. As Deidara would be blinded, it would also end up going straight into his head, and it would stab through his brain. As Deidara would fall onto the ground, and Sasori would immediately whip out all of his puppets, as Sasori would be ready to engage. However, before anything can happen, Saruto would activate his KCM cloak, and he would immediately proceed to blitz Sasori, destroying all of the puppets in the blink of an eye. As Sasori would say, "No!" Immediately, Saruto would stab right into Sasori's heart, and he would die. sorcery would have been taken care of, and Datara in a split second, and Saruto would end up taking Kazekage Gaara to safety before his tailed beast was fully extracted, leading into Lady Chiho never having to sacrifice herself. However, Naruto did have to run as fast as he could to the village for Ino to heal Gaara, and she would do just that, leading into the Kazekage rescue mission going by way smoother than in the original. This means that this version of sorcery didn't even have the time to tell anybody about the Tenchi Bridge reconnaissance mission, so that never ends up happening. Orochimaru never ends up getting a body, and he ends up just kind of having to take over one of the worst ones. He ends up never ending up taking Sasuke, and so he doesn't have a body to go into. So Orochimaru spends his time kind of just plotting and trying to get into the Akatsuki once more. This is when we will now finally go back into them all arriving back at the village, and it's at this point that Shikamaru and Choji would arrive back to the village with horrible news. Asuma, he perished. After hearing this, Ino would break into tears and hold onto Saruto's shoulder. As Saruto would ask how it happened, they would begin to explain that they were ambushed by the Akatsuki. Saruto would be in great anger after realizing that they made Ino cry, and he would immediately say that they don't need anything but family if they're gonna beat the Akatsuki. No, but seriously though, he would say that he's going to help them with taking them down, and that the next time that they meet, things will be much different. After this, Saruto and Shikamaru would come up with a plan, with Shikamaru going through with the same thing that he had done in canon, and Saruto ending up using the Rasen Shuriken to obliterate Kakazu, seeing as, well, everything went by a lot faster. It's at this point that after taking down those members of the Akatsuki, Saruto would finally arrive back to Sasuke's home and begin to think back on everything that's happened and transpired in his life. He would lay down and think that, hey, maybe this fusion wasn't such a bad thing. He finally obtained power, and he thinks that he's ready to take on Itachi. As this is when we will now start talking about Saruto versus Itachi of the Uchiha. And seeing as it's not Sasuke, Itachi has weird mixed feelings about the character that he has to fight against. So this is when Itachi would go over to Lady Tsunade and ask her if he has her permission to go and take on Itachi of the Sharingan, the man who slaughtered his entire clan. Sasuke would ask her, and she would say that he does. However, he will be having to take 2 other ninjas with him, to which Saruto would say that he's going to be taking Kakashi as well as Ino along on the trip. As immediately, this is when Saruto would finally decide that it's time to engage in fighting against Itachi, to which he would arrive to the place with Kisame, and instead of what happened in the original with Team Taka, it would be Kakashi and Ino who actually end up taking on what's his name? I forgot the shark guy's name. Kisame, yes, Kisame. I said it before. I don't know why I forgot it, but Kisame. They would be the ones who actually end up taking on Kisame, and this is when the battle would begin. Kakashi would immediately activate his Sharingan. He would activate the Mangenkyo and actually snipe off one of Kisame's arms before anything could have started. As this is when Ino would activate the Byakuya seal, as she would immediately blitz over to Kisame and start getting into a fight. However, Kisame would start draining her of her chakra extremely quickly due to his Samehada, and he would start holding his own against Kakashi. As he would fuse with Samehada, his limb would grow back just due to the fact that Samehada took place of that, and they would get into a battle to which Kakashi would have to activate all of the gates that he has access to, activate his Mangekyo, and Ino and Kakashi would both be forced to get into a battle which they are both on the back foot against. However, this is when another ninja comes in who wasn't actually present in this version of events, but they will be now. Guy would approach us. He would say, Kakashi, I knew you'd be having fun without me. He'd activate the 7th gate, and he would immediately use the Hirodora. He would destroy Kisame, and this is when at the current moment, the ground would be rumbling as the battle between Itachi and Saruto would be going down, taking place. Itachi would question Saruto, asking him how everything came down to this, and why he is not Sasuke. Saruto would explain everything, and he would ask Itachi why he slaughtered the clan, to which Itachi would say that he did it to prove his power. As Saruto would get enraged and he would immediately blitz over towards Itachi, as they would get into a hand-to-hand bout which Itachi could not keep up with. Without even the KCM cloak, Saruto was able to keep up with Itachi until he activated his Susanoo, to which the battle finally became more of an even battle. After that point, Saruto actually ended up activating KCM, and he would end up using the chakra arms and all of that to basically fight against Itachi, who's using the Susanoo. However, this is when Saruto would jump back, as he would say that this is pointless. He's just wasting chakra on this worthless piece of garbage. He's going to put him down, and he doesn't know why he did that to the Leaf Village. However, he's going to be the one who avenges them. As immediately he would raise his hands to the air, as he would say, "Die with the thunderclap, Thunder Dragon, Kirin." As he would lift his hand down, this is when immediately Kirin would fall down onto Itachi, as he would use the Yadamir and the Susanoo would be no more. As this is when Saruto would approach Itachi and say, "I did it, I won." He would start laughing, as Itachi would then be down on the ground on one knee, as he would say, "Saruto, come here." As Saruto would walk over to him and say, "What do you want, scum?" He'd say, "Say your last words." As he would be charging up a Chidori, Itachi would say, "Take my eyes, Sasuke." As Saruto would say, "What?" This is when Saruto would realize what's going on, and he would take the eyes, as he would say, "Sure, I'll take them." As Saruto would get down on his level and smile in Itachi's face, as Itachi would flick his forehead and say, "I always loved." As immediately Saruto would jam the Chidori into Itachi's chest, taking him out completely. And this is when Saruto would realize what he had done. It's at this point that Saruto would have been the victor of the battle, and he would meet up with Kakashi and Ino as well as Guy, as Ino would begin to heal up Saruto, and he would get some of his chakra replenished. Due to the fact that he has a large amount of chakra and his final attack didn't take any of it, he actually had a pretty decent amount of chakra left. However, this is when a portal would open, as Obito would step out, and he would say, "Saruto, we need to speak." As Saruto would see Obito and say, "I have nothing to speak with you," as he would rush towards Obito and throw Chidori into his chest. However, Obito would go right through it, and he would then hit Saruto at the back of the head, dropping him down, and he would immediately proceed to grab Saruto, as he would try to take him with him. However, Saruto would immediately activate KCM1, and this is when Obito would say, "Looks like you looks like you're very persistent, Saruto. You're going to be a great addition to the Akatsuki." As Obito would knock out Saruto by catching him off guard once again by going down into the ground in a sort of Mirio fashion and going in to poke his eyes, as immediately he would have ended up going and kicking him with his strongest attack right at the back of the head, the point which would immediately knock Saruto out, and he would then immediately portal out of that area. As this is when Saruto would wake up in a room, as immediately he would ask what's going on. This is when Obito would begin to tell him that he is Madara Uchiha. As Saruto would say, "No, Madara is dead. There's no way that could be true." Saruto would question this, and Obito would then begin to explain the plan. As Saruto's Sharingan would morph to that of the Mangekyo, as it would shoot an Amaterasu flame, which would begin to burn Obito. As Obito would scream, he would say, "Ah, ah!" And this is when Saruto would think that he needs to leave now. Obito would have taken Itachi's eyes and put them into a container, and this is when Saruto would wake up. As Obito's having all of this go down, Saruto would say that this is his chance. As immediately he would say, "You caught me off guard before, but this time it's different." As he would blitz towards Obito, and Obito would of course phase through him. However, this is when a clone would emerge from the ground, and shove a Rasengan into Obito's belly. As Obito would be sent flying into the sky. Immediately as that's happening, Saruto would activate KCM and the full extent of his power, as he would immediately create a lightning Rasengan and throw it as so fast at Obito that he doesn't have a chance to react, as he would crush right at his face and it would literally obliterate the mask, sending Obito flying back, as Obito and Saruto would finally get into a battle, the final boss versus Naruto. They would both get into this great battle, and this is when Saruto would begin to unleash all of his taijutsu prowess. And due to the fact that his chakra pool was far greater than Obito's, he was able to fight against Obito in an even range. They would both be going hand to hand, but Saruto would be on the back foot, just due to the fact that, you know, Obito can phase through his attacks. Many of them are very hard to land, and when they do very little damage. Saruto would realize this very slowly, as Obito would be laughing, saying that it's perfect, as Saruto would begin to smile and laugh and say that it's all going according to plan. Saruto would immediately rush over towards Obito, and this is when Obito would actually have somebody appear from behind. This being Konan. She would shoot a bunch of paper bombs at Saruto, to which he would barely realize, and this is when Saruto would say no, as this is when Konan would approach him, and she would then begin to throw a bunch of paper bombs at him, to which Saruto would be in a battle against Konan, Obito, and Pain. Pain would arrive out of nowhere, as all of the members would arrive and they would begin to all tag team Naruto. Naruto would be on the back foot, and he would create a clone which would go far away and start creating sage energy, as this is when Naruto would start taking multiple blows and damage, and he would even get pushed in by the path, one of the 6 paths of pain, as he would start having his face crushed and slammed into the ground. Obito would use his Mangekyo Sharingan to try to take Naruto's limbs away, but Naruto would be too fast, as he would finally activate his Sage mode. He would blitz over towards Obito and slash a kunai across Obito's throat, as Obito would be forced to use the jutsu which can alter reality itself. Obito would come back to life, however he lost his Sharingan, and Obito would have nothing but a normal eye now, meaning that he lost Kamui. And now is the moment that Saruto would proceed to blitz towards Pain, as he would take down each and every single one of the paths, and he would rush towards Konan, as he would take her down as well. And this is when Saruto would smile, thinking that this is perfect. This is perfect. He finally did it. The Akatsuki will be no more. After this blow, this is when everything ends. And it's at this moment that Saruto smiles and slams a Chidori into Obito's head, destroying the rest of the Akatsuki. It's after this that Naruto would pass out unconscious, and a couple of hours later he would wake up in complete agony, as his eyes would still be in the 3 Tomoe Sharingan state, due to the fact that he never ended up learning about Itachi. So Obito didn't even get the chance to explain himself before Saruto rushed at him and began to tell him everything. So him learning about the Uchiha massacre will definitely be later on. So this is basically when most of the conflict in the Naruto universe is ended. There's only one more thing that we now have to cover. After all of this happens, Saruto would return to the village, and this is when he would be praised by Tsunade, told that he did a great job for taking out the Akatsuki all on his lonesome. Saruto would say that it was a pretty hard thing to do and that he just barely was able to do it, but he did it. And the QB inside of him would have actually told him that he did a bad job for some random kid. As within himself, we will see Naruto and Sasuke both smiling, as they're both happy. They're both content. After this, the only thing that basically is left to do is Danzo. Danzo would of course not end up ever having any of the events happen that happen in the events, and so he doesn't have no real time to try to take over the Leaf Village, seeing as there was no pain attack, there was no Jiraiya death. Jiraiya is one of the good things that actually ends up happening from this scenario. He ends up actually surviving due to the way that everything transpired in this version. This is basically where I am going to be ending the scenario for what if Naruto and Sasuke fuse, and I do hope that you guys enjoyed the video, just because, you know, it was a really fun thing to do. What if Naruto and Sasuke fuse is a pretty interesting concept, and I hope you guys ended up liking the what if. I know that by the end of everything, things probably seemed like it was just far too OP, but come on, like, it's Naruto and Sasuke fusion. Like, would you guys have done anything differently? I doubt it. But this is basically where I am going to be ending off the scenario to what if Naruto and Sasuke fuse. Let me know down below in the comment section what you guys thought of the video overall. And with that being said, it has been your boy Zether. Thank you guys so much for 14K. I really appreciate each and every single one of you guys. And I am out. Peace.